Of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Hey, today I want to discuss the Poly acquisition finalized by HP. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about HP's third quarter results. Looking forward to that. But folks, here's the reality. You know, there was this post out there by our good friend Enrique Lores. There he is, President and CEO of HP, making the declaration that they finalized the deal with Poly. Let me read you what he says. I'm excited to announce that HP has completed its acquisition of Poly, paving the way for us to create the hybrid work experience of the future. The hybrid work experience of the future. We got cameras, we got microphones, and the hybrid worker is going to be so much better off with this technology delivered by HP. That's kind of what he's saying. Folks, I got some real questions, and I want to share some thoughts around Poly and HP. The first thing I want to do is I want to show you this YouTube video that was put out there March 28th of this year, just a few months ago. On Squawk on the Streets interviewing Enrique, and he asked Enrique, he says, well, you know, Poly's only had like 5% growth, and you say you're going to grow at 15%. How are you going to do that? And of course, he talks about the remote and the hybrid workforce, and he's got this big sales force that's going to go get the remote and the hybrid workforce. I'm listening to all this, and I'm thinking to myself, this is nuts. And here's why. Because those end users that are working remote are not going to put fancy cameras in their house. They're not going to put fancy microphones in their house. Those end users that work remote are not going to bolt cameras to the trees because they want to work out in the park. The remote worker wants the technology in the device they use, all built in. The remote worker wants the technology in the device they're using, all built in. They want it in their notebook. Folks, what do you think this is? 1950? Do you think Dad has the den, and in his den is where he goes and he works, and that's the only place he works? Most remote workers are sitting on their couch with their notebook on their lap, binge watching a Netflix while they work. Remote workers want to go work in the park. They want to work at the beach. You're going to have tripods. You can put the fancy Poly camera on a tripod so the worker can be at the beach. I think it's a fantasy. Do I believe that people are going to, you know, make their conference rooms better with technology around video and microphone technology? Absolutely. But I'll be honest with you, folks, a lot of that technology comes with the devices they buy. They don't need to buy separate Poly equipment. I think this whole fantasy, how these remote workers are going to be taking all this technology and put it in their houses, is just as ridiculous is talking about how many people we're going to print in their house. And we still have nut jobs talking about that. We got these people with these DCA tool technology talking about how they got to hook it up into people's house so the people don't run out of toner. I'll be real honest with you, folks. This whole hybrid work thing, I think, is completely blown out of proportion. The hybrid worker been working remote because of the global pandemic for over 3 years. Before that, they were already working remote. What people want is all this technology in the device they use. That's what they want. Now, maybe the HP notebooks have some inferior, you know, microphone and video technologies, and they're thinking that with Poly, they could take some of that technology and put it in their devices. That would be a good play. But paying $3.3 billion to do that's a lot of money. So I'm just questioning, what do they really think they're going to get out of this? And are they really believing they're going to grow this thing 15%? I believe there's a lot of, well, maybes in there. There's not a lot of, we're absolutely going to do this and here's how we're going to do it, because the only thing they're talking about is the remote worker hybrid workforce. There's not enough teeth in that language. Those are just buzzwords anymore. Speaking of buzzwords, I got to get off subject a little bit, but HP, they had the Amplified meeting. I talked about it yesterday, and you know, they got a new supply chain chief. Everybody's getting a new supply chain chiefs. Let me just read what this gentleman says here. And this was in CRN, you know, doing a little interview, doing a little article about the Amplified meeting. But here's what he says, his top opening statement. We've got to think differently. What's become the key is resiliency. I want to think of resiliency as insurance. It is this idea of mitigating against potential points of failure, says Ernest Nicholas, HP's new Chief Supply Chain Officer at the Partner-Focused Amplify Executive Forum. Ladies and gentlemen of the world, all the executives at all the OEMs, no matter what the OEM is making, nobody gives a flying crap that you got a job that you got to go and try to figure out how supply chain is going to be different 5, 6, 10 years from now, because we all know it's going to be different. We all know there's so many things that have happened over the last few years that are forcing the whole world to reinvent supply chain. None of those resellers sitting in those audiences give a flying crap about what's going to happen 5 years from now or 6 years from now. They really don't care. What they care about is when is their shit going to show up in their warehouse. Hang on a second, I got to check with human resources to make sure I can leave that word in there. They're saying, okay, yeah, okay. They said don't say it a lot, but it's okay in the text I used it. So, ladies, yeah, I got a human resource person now. I got to check sometimes because sometimes I get so damn excited. There's another, yeah, okay. But anyway, folks, here's the reality. All these people talking about supply chain, you're wasting your time. When you're going to your OEM meeting and you're going to talk to your OEMs, don't waste time talking about supply chain. I assure you, without a doubt, I'll guarantee you 100% that when your OEM gets equipment, they're going to get it to you. They're not going to keep it. I mean, there's no benefit of that, right? Hey, now, folks, we're going to get all this equipment in, but don't let anybody have it. Let's see how packed we can get the warehouse. You see how stupid that sounds? As soon as they get equipment, it's coming to you. It's coming to you, folks. Could they do a better job telling you that it's not coming? Probably. But we waste too much time talking about how we have to fix the supply chain issues in forums where OEMs are talking to resellers. Stop wasting this time doing this. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. You're going to get up out of those chairs and nothing's going to change. Except you heard some buzzwords, and boy, there's a lot of buzzwords going out there. Resiliencies, mitigating the future problems with the supply chain. We all know this. We got to bring stuff more back home and make it, right? We can't outsource everything anymore like we've used to. We probably have to have more things in our warehouses. This is why distribution is going to have a big, big future. Distribution is going to have a huge future because all these OEMs are going to want to fill up those distribution centers with their products so those distribution centers can fulfill those products to the end users and to the resellers. That's where we're going, right? It's even going to happen in the print sector. You're going to see the OEMs are all going to be using distribution. Distribution has a big future. Distribution will definitely fill up warehouses. And the distributors who can fill up the warehouse with the most stuff is going to get the most resellers to do business with them. So there's going to be a race for that. And we got some pretty big distributors out there. But folks, at the end of the day, HP, Poly, cameras, microphones, I just want to end with this thought. You know, a while back, I introduced you all to the Actionable Intelligence blog, you know, the guy that keeps track of all the lawsuits that are going on out there. And I'm thinking to myself as I read through this, HP has a lot of lawsuits. And they're going to win some, they're going to lose some. But here's the reality. It seems like all these lawsuits that I read about HP have to do with HP forcing an end user to abide by a practice. In other words, if you buy my printer, you're only going to use my toner. I'm going to push a firmware out, and I'm going to block out any other toner but mine. I'm going to make you take it out, throw it in the trash can. Now they're talking about they're pushing firmwares out that are telling end users the toners are out of date, even if they're OEM, making them put in new ones because they're trying to sell more supplies. So I bring this up to ask a question as I close out today's video. What will HP do with camera and mic technologies? I'm going to leave that as an open question. I'm not making any acquisitions. I'm just asking a question. What will HP do with microphone and camera technologies when we know that regarding their print business, they're pretty brutal at forcing resellers and end users to do exactly what HP wants for the benefit of HP? Just something to think about, my friends. And everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.